What happens when a black heiress is forced to wear a maid's dress on her wedding day, only to discover her groom is the billionaire backing the family that abused her? In a mansion full of secrets, betrayal, and racial prejudice, one silent daughter is about to flip the entire dynasty upside down, without even raising her voice. Because in exactly 12 minutes, the man at the door wasn't just a guest. He was her husband, and he came to collect what was always his. If you think you've seen betrayal before, keep watching, because what happens next will flip everything you thought you knew about family, power, and revenge. Miss this, and you'll miss the moment where silence becomes justice. Selena Carter didn't live in the Carter mansion. She survived in it. From the outside, the Whitestone estate perched atop Lake Forest was the very picture of American prosperity. Clean-cut hedges, imported marble pillars, and a driveway so long it needed its own postal code. But no glossy magazine would ever feature the real story behind those doors. Because behind every lavish brunch and red carpet fundraiser, there was a girl with brown skin scrubbing someone else's footprints off Italian floors. Selena wasn't a maid. Not officially. She was the eldest daughter of Edward Carter, a powerful real estate tycoon whose name graced half the skyscrapers on the Chicago skyline. But Selena's mother had been Danielle Moore, a brilliant black historian whose only crime was dying too young. After Danielle's death, Edward married Vivian Lawrence, a white socialite with old money, sharp cheekbones, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Vivian made sure everyone knew the unspoken rule. Selena was not one of them. From the moment she could walk, Selena was assigned chores. At first, they were disguised as teaching responsibility. Tidy your room, clean the breakfast table. But by the time she turned 10, her days began before sunrise and ended after everyone else's dinner was served. Vacuuming halls, folding her siblings' laundry, washing the muddy cleats her stepbrothers carelessly tossed at her feet. "Be useful, won't you?" Vivian would say, sipping from a crystal flute as Selena swept the patio. "Shouldn't she be wearing an apron or something?" Emily, the youngest, a blonde with icy eyes, asked one Christmas, loud enough for the staff to hear. "Oh please, she likes playing Cinderella." Chase, her arrogant stepbrother, sneered one Thanksgiving. "Just missing the glass slipper. Or any shoes worth more than $30. They laughed. Selena didn't. She had learned early on that tears were a luxury. In this house, showing pain was permission for more. Her room? Not upstairs with the others, who had winged bed frames and built-in speakers and mood lighting. No, Selena's was in the basement, next to the boiler, with a mattress barely thicker than a yoga mat. One time, when a pipe burst and soaked everything she owned, no one came to help. She dried her textbooks with a hairdryer and never said a word. Vivian never hit her. She didn't have to. Her weapons were silence, sarcasm, and the skill of public shame. At dinner, the family used real silverware. Selena got plastic. At parties, the siblings were designer. Selena wore thrift store donations Vivian said were better than nothing. When guests asked who she was, Vivian would smile and say, "Oh, just Edward's daughter from his first phase." Worse than being invisible was being tolerated. One day, a reporter from a luxury magazine came to photograph the family for a spread on Chicago's next generation of power. The public image mattered, so Vivian told Selena she could be in one photo, just the group shot, and she had to stand in the back. "Make sure you don't shine too much," she added with a smirk. "We don't want people thinking we adopted a servant." Selena wore her only clean dress, ironed the night before in the dark. After the shoot, she wasn't invited to dinner with the reporter. She was told to serve the wine. That night, Selena sat alone in the basement, rereading a letter from her late mother. It was faded, with coffee stains and a frayed crease down the middle. "You are light, my Selena. Not theirs to dim. Keep rising." She clutched it like armor. She needed it. Because the worst wounds in the Carter house weren't on the skin. They were the quiet ones that festered behind locked lips and bent backs. Despite the cruelty, Selena didn't drop out of school. She thrived. She worked double shifts at diners and folded laundry at 24-hour laundromats to save for tuition. At 18, she earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university in New York. Not that anyone celebrated. When she told the family, they barely looked up from their phones. "Oh," Emily said. "So you'll finally leave? Good. You got a scholarship?" Chase snorted. "For what, cleaning?" Vivian didn't even pretend to care. She just muttered, Don't embarrass us while you're there. Change your last name if you have to. Selena packed her bags in silence. But even in college, the Carter name cast a long shadow. She never mentioned her father in interviews or essays. Professors were stunned at her intellect. Few knew she often wrote assignments in her phone during bus rides home for breaks, where she'd spend holidays cooking for a family that never thanked her. Every Christmas break, she returned, not for love, but because she couldn't afford flights elsewhere. She cleaned, cooked, and smiled through the same slurs and microaggressions. Careful, Selena. Don't burn the turkey like your mom burned bridges, Nathan once joked during Thanksgiving. Selena had to remind herself, these were her siblings. And still, she never fought back. She didn't believe she had a right to. In her mind, she was the outsider, the reminder of a chapter Vivian tried to erase, the stain on a whitewashed legacy. But what the Carters didn't know, what they had never cared to find out, was that Danielle Moore had left more than just a letter. She had left a promise, a plan to protect her daughter long after she was gone. A contract, signed with a friend whose son would one day seek out Selena. Selena didn't know it yet, but her silence had been misread as weakness. Her tears, swallowed night after night, were being stored like thunder behind a dam. And that dam was about to break. Because somewhere, a man named Jonathan Whitmore was watching. He had met her once. In a campus library. She was wearing oversized headphones, reading Baldwin. He remembered her eyes. Not sad, not angry, just restrained. He had tried to say hi. She had nodded politely and walked away. But she never left his mind. He knew who she was. He knew the contract. And he knew, just by looking at her, she had no idea what she was worth. Not yet, but she would. You could always tell who was real Carter by their reflection in the grand hallway mirror. Every morning, Chase and Nathan would swagger past it in tailored suits, high-end sneakers, and Rolexes that gleamed like trophies. Emily followed soon after, dressed in silk, hair freshly styled, eyes behind designer sunglasses even when the sun hadn't yet risen. They laughed. They posed. They lived as if the world were built for them, and maybe, in a way, it was. Then came Selena. She didn't walk past the mirror. She avoided it. Her uniform was always the same. A faded hoodie, sneakers with cracked soles, jeans she'd stitched 3 times. No one in that house had ever seen her in something new. Not because she couldn't find it, but because she couldn't afford it. The irony? They were all Carter children, all with the same blood flowing through their veins. But blood, as Selena had learned, meant little in a house where power spoke louder than DNA. Vivian made the rules, and Selena was never truly in them. When she returned home after her junior year at college, she found that her already cramped basement room had been converted into a storage space. Her clothes were stuffed in garbage bags, and her bed had been replaced with crates of wine and old holiday decor. Emily looked down the stairs and grinned. We figured you wouldn't mind the couch upstairs. It's temporary, until you leave again. Selena didn't argue. She dragged the bags quietly, set up her bed on a lumpy sofa in the den, and prepared herself for yet another summer of serving the very people who resented her existence. But that summer hit differently. Chase had just returned from a luxury internship in Switzerland. Nathan had been accepted into a tech incubator, thanks to Edward's connections, and Emily had launched her own online fashion boutique. The house was buzzing with plans, brunches, and endless parties. And Selena? She cleaned up after them. Literally. She worked the morning shift at a diner downtown, often returning with burns on her wrists and blisters on her feet. Then, she'd wash dishes left behind by Chase's poker nights, or steam clean red wine stains from Emily's white carpet after her influencer friends got too drunk. One night, Selena came home exhausted, only to find Nathan using her laptop without asking. She asked him, calmly, to log out. He sneered. This isn't even yours. Dad paid for it, right? No, she said, voice firm. I did. Nathan laughed. With what? Your waitress tips. That night, Selena cried into her pillow, not because of the insult, but because it reminded her that no matter how hard she worked, she'd always be seen as less than. Not because of her efforts, but because of her skin, because of who her mother was. One evening, Vivian threw a family dinner to celebrate Chase's new business venture. The house glowed with candlelight, the dining table set with imported china, gold cutlery, and crystal wine glasses. Everyone had a place card. Selena didn't have a seat. "Where should I sit?" she asked quietly. Vivian glanced over her shoulder. "You can take your plate in the kitchen. The help usually eats there." Selena stood frozen. No one looked at her. No one cared. She picked up her plate and walked to the back. But just as she sat down, she heard Emily say, "It's weird, right? How's she still here? Like, how long do we have to pretend she belongs?" Chase answered, "Long enough for Dad to stop feeling guilty, I guess." Nathan added, "I heard she's getting married soon. Some nobody from New Jersey or something. Probably met him at the diner." They laughed. Selena said nothing. She just stared at her reflection in the kitchen window. Faint, blurry, not quite real. Later that night, Edward called from Dubai. Selena answered the phone, hoping, just hoping, he'd ask about her. Maybe say he missed her, or he was proud. Instead, he said, "Make sure the house looks great for next week. We've got a big guest coming, Jonathan Whitmore." Selena blinked. "That name again. Do I know him?" she asked. Edward chuckled. "You met him once when you were 6. He's a good kid. Smart. His dad and I go way back. He's coming to visit for something important. Do your best to be presentable." Then the line went dead. Presentable. Like she was a prop. She didn't know it yet, but the guest Edward spoke of, Jonathan, was not coming for brunch. He wasn't coming for business. He was coming for her. But in that moment, Selena only felt the weight of a world that told her, day after day, she didn't belong. One afternoon, while taking out the trash, Selena noticed a group of neighborhood girls sitting by the garden fence. Emily was among them, sipping lemonade, scrolling through her phone. As Selena passed by, one of the girls whispered, "Oh, is that your housekeeper?" Emily smirked. "Kind of. She's complicated." They laughed. Selena stood there for a beat, back straight, face unreadable. Then she kept walking. But that night, she cried herself to sleep again. This time, not because of them, but because she believed them. She believed she wasn't worthy. That maybe her mother had been wrong. That maybe the fight wasn't worth it. But she didn't know the storm was already gathering. That every insult hurled, every scar endured, every injustice suffered had been counted by the man who was watching her from afar. She didn't know that Jonathan Whitmore had already booked his flight. And he wasn't coming alone. He was bringing the truth. And a ring. If fate had a file cabinet, the folder labeled Selena Carter would have sat unopened for over a decade, buried beneath stacks of forgotten promises and sealed secrets. But across the country, in a penthouse overlooking San Francisco Bay, Jonathan Whitmore was opening that folder. Jonathan wasn't just any man. At 29, he was the CEO of Whitmore Technologies, a company quietly behind half the cybersecurity systems used by U.S. banks and international governments. He was heir to a dynasty, raised in a world of handshakes worth billions, and headlines that whispered his name. But he hated all of it, except for one thing, a girl he couldn't forget. 12 years ago, at a private estate gathering hosted by Edward Carter, Jonathan had met a little girl with caramel skin and untamed curls, hiding behind a bookshelf. He remembered it clearly. While other kids played piano or posed for photos, she sat quietly reading The Souls of Black Folk by W.B. Du Bois. "What are you reading?" he'd asked. She looked up, guarded. Something most people here wouldn't understand. He'd smiled. She hadn't. That was Selena. That was the day she unknowingly changed his life. He didn't know then that their mothers, Danielle Moore and Evelyn Whitmore, had once been best friends, sharing dreams of raising children who would lead with both power and empathy. Before Danielle passed, she and Evelyn had drafted a symbolic betrothal agreement, not to control their kids' futures, but to protect them from families that might try to bury who they were. It wasn't legally binding, but to Jonathan, it was everything. After Danielle's death, Evelyn honored the pact privately. Before she herself passed away from cancer, she left the contract in Jonathan's safe with a letter. "You'll know when the time is right. She won't ask to be rescued, but she'll need someone who sees her." And so he watched. He never reached out, never wanted to intrude, but he quietly kept tabs. Every time Selena published a paper at university, he read it. Every time she made the dean's list, he smiled. And when he heard whispers of how she lived back in that mansion, he burned inside, but waited. He waited because he wanted her to stand tall when they finally met. Not as a woman broken by her family, but as the queen she was born to be. Now, he had made up his mind. It was time. He boarded a private jet that morning, wearing the same cufflinks his mother gave him, holding the contract that once belonged to Danielle Moore. But as he flew toward Chicago, Selena had no idea her life was about to change. Back at the Carter estate, things were unraveling faster than anyone realized. Vivian was consumed with planning a high-profile garden party, part of Edward's attempt to seal a multi-million-dollar merger. Chase was practicing speeches, Emily was obsessing over her Instagram content, and Nathan was plotting his next failed crypto investment. Selena, meanwhile, was cleaning up after their chaos. She noticed something odd that day, an unusual flurry of activity from the staff. Fresh flowers, steam-pressed linens, a new bottle of 100-year-old whiskey placed prominently in the study. She asked a maid, "Is someone important coming?" The maid whispered, "Some investor. Big deal, apparently. They're on edge about it." Selena didn't think much of it. She was too busy scrubbing wine off a velvet chair from one of Emily's casual soirees. But that night, she overheard something that made her stop cold. Vivian was speaking to her lawyer on the phone. Her voice was sharp, agitated. "I don't care what was signed 20 years ago. This marriage contract is ridiculous," she snapped. "She's not one of us. He's not marrying her. I'll burn the paper before I let that happen." Selena froze in the hallway, her hands still wet from the dishes. Her heart pounded. Marriage contract? Who? She waited until the line went dead, then crept away. Hours later, she confronted Edward as he stepped into the foyer, tie loosened, eyes tired. "Dad, can I ask you something?" He looked at her like she was an email he didn't want to read. "What is it, Selena? Is there some sort of marriage contract about me? From when I was a kid?" He sighed. A long, world-weary sigh. "Your mother had dreams. She was close with Evelyn Whitmore. They wrote something up when you were little. It wasn't serious." Selena blinked. "So who's the guy?" "Jonathan Whitmore. You met him once. But it doesn't matter." "Doesn't matter?" He adjusted his cuff. "Vivian's not comfortable with the idea. And you're not ready for that world." There it was. Not good enough. Not one of them. Selena clenched her fists. "So you're saying I'm not worthy of something my mother arranged with her best friend?" Edward didn't answer. He just walked away. That night, Selena sat alone in the backyard, the moonlight casting shadows over the pool. She looked at her reflection, older now, worn down, but still carrying that fire her mother once planted. For the first time, she whispered to herself, "I have the right to exist here, and I'm done apologizing for it." Meanwhile, Jonathan's plane landed. His driver was already en route to the estate. He held the contract in one hand, his mother's letter in the other. He wasn't just coming to honor a promise. He was coming to reclaim something that never should have been buried. A girl with calloused hands and royal blood. A woman born into silence who deserved to be heard. And in less than 24 hours, he would ring the doorbell of a house that had forgotten her and remind them all who she really was. It began like any other morning in the Carter mansion, cold, calculated, and utterly indifferent to the girl who lived in the shadows. Selena woke up to the sound of porcelain crashing. She sat up on the couch in the den, heart racing. For a second, she thought it might be an accident. Then she heard Emily's voice, sharp and mocking. "She can clean it up. That's what she's here for." Selena stepped into the kitchen to find broken dishes all over the floor. Emily, dressed in satin and silk, sipped from a glass of mimosa. Nathan leaned on the counter, laughing. Chase scrolled through his phone without even looking up. "Good morning, Cinderella," Emily chirped. "Hope you got some beauty sleep." Selena looked at the mess and then at them. "What happened?" "Oh, we were just celebrating," Chase said, motioning at the shards on the floor. "Big day today." "Big day?" she repeated, confused. Vivian entered next, in a pristine white suit, manicured fingers holding a clipboard. "Ah, Selena. Glad you're up. Today is your wedding day," she said flatly, as if announcing the weather. Selena blinked. "Excuse me." Vivian rolled her eyes. "Don't act surprised. You've known something was coming. That ridiculous contract your mother wrote is unfortunately still hovering over our heads like a bad smell." "So it's actually happening?" Selena asked, cautiously hopeful. Vivian smirked. "Oh yes. But let's be clear, this isn't a celebration. This is a cleanup. And since you're so good at cleaning, we thought it would be poetic for you to prepare your own send-off." Selena stared at her. Vivian walked over to a coat rack and pulled off a long, gray dress, made of stiff polyester, the kind that looked like it belonged in a hotel laundry room. "This will be your attire today," she said. "We thought about letting you borrow one of Emily's old dresses, but frankly, this is more fitting." Selena took the dress slowly. It was a maid's uniform. Not a joke. Not a prank. It was an insult carved into fabric. "I'm not wearing this," she whispered. "You will," Vivian snapped. "Or you can forget the whole arrangement. And I'm sure Jonathan Whitmore would love to know the real you before he makes a mistake." Selena's fist trembled. "You don't know him." Vivian leaned close. "Neither do you." And just like that, she walked away, heels clicking like gunshots against marble. Selena stood there, holding the uniform, breathing through the storm inside her. She wanted to scream, to run, to fight. But she knew what would happen if she did. She would lose the last thread of dignity she had left. So instead, she went to the guest bathroom, locked the door, and dressed herself in silence. Her reflection in the mirror nearly broke her. A maid's dress. On her wedding day. No veil. No flowers. No celebration. No music. Just cleaning rags, dirty mop buckets, and people who couldn't wait to throw her out like yesterday's trash. Hours passed. The mansion buzzed with activity. Florists came and went. Caterers arranged food for a party she wasn't invited to. Emily posed for photos in the garden in white lace, just for content, she said. Selena swept the patio. She mopped the floors. She polished silver, all while trying to keep her hands steady, even though her soul was cracking with every task. Then came the dishes. Chase and Nathan thought it'd be funny to throw them on the floor, one by one. "Oops," Chase said, tossing a glass. "Guess you missed a spot." "Try again," Nathan added, dropping a ceramic plate that shattered by her feet. Selena didn't flinch. Not anymore. She got on her knees, picked up the shards, and kept going, until one of the plates sliced her palm, deep. Blood dripped down her fingers. She gasped and instinctively pressed it to her apron. From the corner, Emily laughed. "Don't stain the dress. You're not paying for it." And then, the final blow. Vivian entered with a garbage bag. She walked up to Selena and, without a word, dumped its contents at her feet. Selena's clothes. Her shoes. Her old journals. Even the letter from her mother. "All packed for your honeymoon," she said. Selena stared at the pile, blood still dripping from her hand. "Now get out front. He'll be here soon. You can greet him like the maid you are." Selena stood, bruised, bleeding, but somehow still tall. She walked to the front door, each step heavier than the last. She didn't cry. Not yet. She couldn't. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. The sky outside was gray, wind whipping through the trees. She stood alone, in her maid's uniform, clutching the hem to hide her wound, trying to hold herself together. And then, a car pulled up. A sleek, black, matte-finish Rolls-Royce Phantom. The kind of car that whispered power. The engine cut. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. And out stepped Jonathan Whitmore. Everything stopped. Selena didn't move. Jonathan froze when he saw her, her bloodied hand, her dirted dress, her hollow eyes. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he took one step forward. "Who did this to my wife?" His voice was calm, but underneath, it trembled with rage. From the doorway, Vivian laughed. "Wife? Oh, darling, you must be confused." Chase and Nathan chuckled behind her. "She's not your wife," Emily added. "She's the maid." Jonathan didn't blink. He turned to Selena, his voice suddenly soft. "Selena, are you okay?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Just a nod. Just tears. Then Edward's voice boomed from inside. "Jonathan, you're early." He pushed past his family, reaching out to shake hands, all smiles. "Everyone, this is Jonathan Whitmore, the man who's been backing our new development project." Everyone froze. Emily dropped her phone. Nathan turned white. Chase stepped back. Vivian looked like she'd seen a ghost. And Jonathan? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound folder. Inside was the contract, the same one signed by Evelyn Whitmore and Danielle Moore. He handed it to Edward without a word. Then he turned back to Selena. "I came here today, not for business, but to take my wife home." And with that, the Carter family was no longer in control. Selena's silence had ended, and the reckoning had begun. For the first time in her life, Selena didn't feel small standing at the front of the Carter estate. It wasn't because the pain had vanished. The cut on her hand still stung, and the sting of humiliation burned even deeper. But as she stood beside Jonathan Whitmore, his hand gently resting on her back, his presence radiating a calm power, something inside her shifted. Vivian was the first to break the silence. She let out a sharp laugh, high-pitched and brittle. "Oh, this is absurd," she said, waving her manicured fingers as if brushing away dust. "You can't be serious. This whole charade. This Maid fantasy? Really?" Jonathan didn't answer her. Not yet. Instead, he turned to Edward, who was still blinking, stunned. The contract Jonathan had handed him hanging limp in his hands. "You read it, didn't you?" Jonathan asked calmly. "That's your signature. And Danielle's. And my mother's." Edward's voice cracked. I remember it. It was symbolic. Sentimental. It was a promise," Jonathan corrected, his tone steel. "One your wife and children have chosen to spit on." Chase stepped forward, trying to recover control. "Look, man, this is obviously some weird misunderstanding. Selena's not exactly." "Finish that sentence," Jonathan cut in coldly, "and I'll make sure your startup never gets another round of funding from anyone in the valley. Ever." Chase's mouth snapped shut. Emily took a nervous step back. Vivian scoffed. "You're threatening us? In our home? Do you have any idea who you're speaking to?" Jonathan turned to face her fully for the first time. "Yes," he said. "I'm speaking to the woman who forced her husband's daughter to wear a maid's uniform on her wedding day, who made her bleed, who let her sons throw dishes at her like she was a dog." Selena's shoulders tightened. She wanted to run, to disappear, but Jonathan wouldn't let her. His arm stayed firm behind her. He didn't shield her. He stood beside her. "She's lying," Nathan said quickly. "She's just trying to get something out of you." "She hasn't said a word," Jonathan replied, cutting him off again. "And that's the difference between all of you and her. She endured all of this without ever lashing out, without demanding anything. But that ends today." Vivian's voice rose. "You think a few stories are going to turn her into royalty? She's nothing. Her mother was a—" "Say it," Jonathan said softly. "Go ahead. Say what you've wanted to say all along." The room fell deathly quiet. Vivian clenched her jaw, but said nothing. Edward finally spoke, his voice shaking. "I didn't know it had gotten this bad." Jonathan held up a hand. "You knew. Maybe not the specifics, but you knew they didn't treat her like family. And you let it happen." Edward looked at Selena for the first time, really looked at her. He saw the blood-stained dress, the bruises on her arms, the absence of light in her eyes. His mouth opened, but no words came. "I asked you to make sure the house was ready for my visit," Jonathan said, his voice quiet but hard. "And you gave me this." He turned to Selena. "Come on. You're not staying here another second." Selena hesitated. Her hands trembled. She looked at her father, her stepmother, her half-siblings. None of them said sorry. None of them stopped her. Only silence. She took Jonathan's hand. But just as they turned toward the door, Vivian called out, "You're making a mistake. You think marrying her makes her equal to you." Jonathan turned around, slowly. "No," he said. "It proves she's always been." Then he pulled out his phone. "Since none of you seem to grasp consequences, let me help." He tapped the screen once. Across the city, emails began sending. Lawyers were activated. PR firms received statements. Bank partnerships were paused. And the Carter name, once synonymous with prestige, was now under siege. "By tomorrow morning," Jonathan said without raising his voice, "your accounts will be frozen, your deals will collapse, and your name will be blacklisted in every major financial circle." Nathan cursed. Emily gasped. Chase looked like he'd been punched in the chest. "You can't do this," Vivian shouted. Jonathan tilted his head. "I already did." And with that, he opened the door for Selena. She stepped outside, the wind hitting her face like a baptism. For the first time in years, she wasn't walking out of the Carter house in shame. She was walking away from it. Forever. In the driveway, the chauffeur stood waiting beside the car. Jonathan opened the door for her, but she paused. She looked back one last time, not to forgive, not to gloat, just to remember, because this was the house that had broken her. And the moment she stopped letting it define her, the city looked different from the back seat of a Rolls-Royce. Not because the skyline had changed, but because, for the first time in years, Selena Carter wasn't looking at it from behind a diner window, a bus stop, or the shadows of someone else's life. She was gliding through the streets like someone who mattered. Still dressed in the stained maid's uniform, with blood dried across her palm and bruises painting her skin, Selena sat stiff and silent as the luxury car curved down Lakeshore Drive. Beside her, Jonathan sat steady. Not talking, not pushing, just being there. "I don't even know where we're going," she said after a long silence. He turned his head to her gently. "Home, Selena almost laughed. I don't have one. He didn't smile. You do now? The car exited the highway and drove north, far from the familiar streets of the Carter estate, until it reached a gated property overlooking Lake Michigan. Towering evergreens lined the entrance, and a modern mansion of white stone and glass unfolded like a private sanctuary. As the gates opened, Selena blinked in disbelief. This wasn't just a house. It was peace, poured into architecture. Jonathan turned to her, voice soft. My mother designed this before she passed. She said she wanted it to feel like a place where a person could finally exhale. Selena swallowed hard. It's beautiful. You're the first person I've ever brought here, he said. The car stopped. The driver opened her door. Selena stepped out slowly, unsure if she was allowed to breathe here, unsure if this was real. Inside, the house was warm and bright. Staff bowed quietly. No one stared at her clothes. No one sneered. One woman even offered her a clean towel and whispered, I'll take care of your hand, Miss Carter. Miss Carter. She hadn't been called that with respect in years. Jonathan led her to the sunroom, where the lake glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows. He gestured for her to sit, and then disappeared briefly. When he returned, he held a box. I wasn't going to do this today, he said. But you deserve to know everything now. He placed the box in her lap. Inside was the original engagement contract, handwritten on thick parchment. Beside it was a letter, one she recognized immediately. Her mother's handwriting. The same loops and flourishes that had marked the only letter she'd ever kept. Selena picked it up with trembling fingers and began to read. My darling girl, if you're holding this, it means the world has tried to forget you. But I haven't. And neither has Evelyn. That we saw what this world would try to do to girls like you. Strong, brown-skinned, brilliant. We made a promise that no matter how hard they tried to bury your light, someone would be there to help you rise. Jonathan is that someone. Don't look for perfection in him. Look for truth. Look for a man who sees your worth before you ever have to prove it. Love always, Mama. Selena blinked, and the tears spilled. All this time, she'd believed no one was fighting for her. She was wrong. Jonathan sat across from her, quiet, allowing the moment to unfold. I didn't want to force anything, he said. I've known about the contract since I was 15, but I didn't want you to feel like you were chosen out of obligation. I wanted you to be ready, on your own terms. Selena looked up. And now? He smiled gently. Now, you get to choose. No strings. No pressure. Whether you stay here or walk away forever, you do it as an equal. Selena held the letter to her chest and exhaled. For real this time. How did you even know all that was happening back there? He hesitated. I had someone keeping tabs. Your father and I stayed in contact for business, and I made sure someone always checked in on you quietly. I've seen every paper you published. I even know about that diner you worked at where the owner used to pocket your tips. Selena raised an eyebrow. You knew all that, and you never said anything? I was waiting for you to recognize your own value, he said. Now you have. That moment when you walked out of that house and didn't look back? That was it. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken years settling into the space between them. Then Jonathan added, There's something else. He walked to a side table and brought back a leather portfolio. Inside was documentation, clear, legal, powerful. This is a full trust in your name, he said, set up by my mother and yours. It's been sitting dormant since Danielle passed, but it's yours now. Selena blinked. A trust. He nodded. Not charity. Not a favor. It was always yours. The Carters never knew. Your mother didn't trust them with it. Inside were shares in Whitmore Technologies, enough cash to start 5 companies, and assets that made Selena a millionaire in her own right. Selena covered her mouth with her hand. I don't know what to say. Jonathan leaned closer. Say nothing. Just remember this moment next time someone tries to tell you you're less than. She nodded slowly. It was too much to process all at once. The house, the wealth, the truth, the fact that someone had loved her enough, before she could even speak for herself, to carve out a legacy in her name. As the sun dipped behind the lake, painting the sky in gold and rose, Selena stood at the window. She wasn't just safe now. She was seen. Not because of Jonathan, not because of money, but because she had finally been given the space to rise, without apology. The news broke at 7:14 a.m. Carter family loses multi-million-dollar deal following allegations of abuse, discrimination. By 8 a.m., 3 major investors pulled out. By noon, Edward Carter was called into an emergency meeting by the board of directors. And by 2 p.m., the Carter mansion, once a fortress of arrogance, was flooded with reporters, questions, and scandal. But none of them knew the full truth. Not yet, because the real reckoning wasn't on the news. It was happening quietly, behind closed doors, when Selena Carter walked back into that house. This time, not as a servant, but as a woman transformed. She wore no diamonds, no designer gown, just a sleek navy blue suit, her curls tied back, her step steady and deliberate. Jonathan walked beside her, not as a shield, but as a partner. The house was oddly quiet. Emily was the first to appear, her usual air of superiority shattered. The Instagram account she poured her identity into had lost thousands of followers overnight. Brands canceled their collaborations. Her inbox was full of silence. "You shouldn't be here," she muttered, arms crossed tightly. "This is our home." "No," Selena said gently. "This was your mirror." But now the reflections cracked. From behind the staircase, Nathan appeared. His expression was hollow. His tech incubator had been dropped. No one in Silicon Valley wanted the stain of a racial scandal tied to their brand. "You think this makes you better than us?" he snapped. Selena looked him in the eye. "I never needed to be better. I just needed to be treated like a person." Chase stepped in, suit wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. His startup funding had dried up overnight. Banks froze the Carter family's accounts pending investigation. For a man who had never heard the word no, the silence was unbearable. "This is revenge," he said. "No," Jonathan replied, stepping forward. "This is accountability." Then Vivian appeared, still elegant, still poised. But something in her was unraveling. She stared at Selena for a long time, lips pursed, calculating her next move. "You came back just to watch us burn," she said coldly. "No," Selena replied. "I came back because someone had to say it out loud." She paused. Then, without raising her voice, without flinching, she spoke the words that had lived inside her for over a decade. "I am Danielle Moore's daughter. I am Edward Carter's firstborn. I am not your mistake. I am not your maid. And I was never beneath you." Vivian's face cracked, but not enough to shatter. She was too proud, too bitter. So Selena said the final blow with kindness. "And I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forget. And it doesn't mean return." She turned to Jonathan. "I just needed them to hear it once." He nodded and offered his hand. She took it. But as they turned to leave, Edward Carter entered from the hallway, older, grayer, and for the first time quiet. His empire was collapsing. He looked at Selena like a man trying to rewind time with his eyes. "I failed you," he said, barely a whisper. "I let them erase your place. I let them erase her." Selena didn't respond, because some things didn't need words. She simply nodded, and then walked away. The front doors opened. The wind hit her face again, cool and sharp like before, but this time it wasn't punishment. It was freedom. As the car pulled away from the Carter estate for the last time, Selena looked back once, not with longing, not with bitterness, but with clarity. She hadn't destroyed them. They destroyed themselves by choosing to mock the one person who never wanted power, only peace. And now, she had both. The headlines were different now. Selena Moore Whitmore launches new foundation for underserved girls in STEM. In a crowded press conference hall, she stood poised in front of dozens of flashing cameras. Her words were simple, but sharp. Every girl told she's not enough deserves a place to rise. We're building that place, together. The crowd erupted. And backstage, Jonathan watched her, not like a man who saved her, but like a man privileged to witness her rise. She was no longer the forgotten daughter. She was a legacy reborn. Sometimes, the most dangerous people in your life are the ones who claim to love you. Selena Carter's story is not just about revenge. It's about rediscovering your worth, even when the world has done everything to erase it. It's about rising in silence, enduring in shadows, and still choosing to forgive without forgetting. Because real power isn't loud. Real power walks out of the fire, dignified, whole, and unshaken. And remember this, you don't have to prove your worth to anyone who's committed to not seeing it. The right people already do. If this story moved you, even just a little, thank you for being here. Every like, every comment, every share is a stand against injustice and a vote for stories that matter. So if you believe in second chances, quiet strength, and poetic justice, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let's make sure voices like Selena's are never silenced again. Until next time, stay kind, Stay strong and never forget who you are.